Welcome back to Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. I'm joined by Laura Bradburn. It's half-time, scoreless at Celtic Park. Laura, Livingston have done what we would expect them to do. We've seen it so often at Celtic Park. I guess the big question is, in a scenario like this, where you've got all the possession, you're pinning, the opposition back. I counted 17. There might have been even more than that. Crosses left and right, some dangerous, some not so much. Yet you go in at 0-0 at half-time. What do you do as a manager? Do you have faith in the fact that, we're in absolute control, which is the second, the flip side of the coin that we've been talking about with Ange, and it will come? Or do you approach it slightly differently? I noticed there in the last 5 minutes of the first half, there was more of a central emphasis and we started getting a few chances that way as well.
Yeah, a couple of good chances towards the end. One pretty much cleared off the line from Ralston. Was about the closest chance we had, apart from a header from Starfelt from a corner a couple of minutes before that. It's a difficult one for a manager to know what to do, actually, because your instinct would be, well, let's change things up top because we need a bit more potency in front of goal. But actually, I think it's been further back than that that's been the issue. The number of chances we've created, although we've been in control possession-wise, I don't think we've had a lot of really good chances. And my instinct would be, in that case, to maybe look at a defensive change of some description. What that would be, I'm not sure. Whether McCarthy might be able to come on and push the midfield up a little bit further, even though he is a defensive midfielder. That might be an option instead of Beaton. But it's a difficult one, as I said, because your instinct is to go for, we need a striker to take their chances, but if they're not being created, then there's no point in making that change until they are.
We spoke before the game, Laura, about the wizardry of Tommy Rogic. We've seen Tom Rogic do things with the football this season that no one else in the squad is capable of doing. Sometimes you're picking a lock when it's a defence like this, where it's like 10 or 11 men behind the ball, and it is that magic of a Tommy Rogic sometimes that you need. The other option, and we've seen this many, many times, it's a long-range option, and we'd certainly have players who can do that as well. I don't want to appear too doom and gloom because, as I say, we're completely in control of this, and there were some really decent performances in the first half. I'm going to bring up one of the first comments that's come in from Autumn Glow, a couple of observations by him. Beaton doesn't seem to be focused. Ralston was the best player in the first half, and Giakoumakis should be there to meet one of his crosses. How was Jota only 6.5 million? I'm going to start with the final point. I took a note here going on about the two loanees being absolutely key to the Celtic side. You look at Cameron Carter-Vickers at the back, and indeed Jota on the left. I know he kind of went out right near the end of the first half. A couple of sublime bits of skill by Jota. I mean, there was a moment where it looked as though the ball was going to end up, row 3 or 4 in the north stand, and he pulls it from midair and then just admires what he's done for a second before resuming with the game. He's an absolute baller, isn't he?
Well, if I was Jota, I'd be admiring it as well, because what else are you going to do? Not to be TMI about it, but I made a noise that I can't even describe when he pulled that out there. It was just a kind of guttural, I just didn't know how to explain it. That's the kind of clash you want to see in a Celtic shirt. I mean, I know we're sitting here 0-0 with Livingston and the victory's all that matters, but you've got to appreciate something like that when you see it. I mean, I've seen some of the best players in the world. I've been fortunate enough to watch some of the best players in the world. That is as good as you'll see any of them do anywhere. I mean, he made a pass from Ralston, and I have to say it was one of Ralston's few errors. I agree with the commenter before that I think Ralston's perhaps been our best player in the first half. But I mean, it made that pass go from being an absolute tank of a pass straight out of the park to one that actually ended up looking quite good, because he managed to, I don't know, I pulled my hamstring just watching what he did, basically. It was absolutely unreal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the ones where I think I just laughed because I just thought that is just absolutely ridiculous. But he is a ridiculous talent. And we've said time and time again, after 2 or 3 games, we were saying, right, we've just basically got to take up the option once we have the opportunity to do it. He looks creative. I think Ralston, I would agree with the comment, Ralston has been very dangerous offensively. I mean, this is a part of his game, though, isn't it? I mean, he is good for an assist and a goal, and he came closer than anyone else in that first half. What about his crosses, though? I mean, he likes to hit the line and get the ball over.
Yeah, I mean, he's providing a lot of attacking threat both in front of goal and from out wide. And I keep meaning to say this, but like Colin Watts, our resident sort of anorak, if you like, for the younger players in the team and what their history is. I'd be interested to know if Ralston's got a history of having played further forward in his youth career, because he certainly looks like somebody who's accomplished at striking a ball. I think, to be honest, the quality of his crosses is often better than Abada's, actually, and I would hope that in the second half, if he's given the opportunity to put more in, that there's somebody in the middle that can get on the end of them, because it's been really the only disappointment with Giakoumakis. I like his movement, Giakoumakis, and I like his physicality, but I think he needs to make more of an effort to get on the end of those balls that are coming into the box.
I was looking at that and I wondered if we were fashioning that style with Giakoumakis in mind. Is that why? I mean, I counted 17 crosses. There was probably a couple of others, which is an incredible amount in one half of football, Laura. I don't think, and I'm not criticising Kyogo, I never would. I don't think that's his biggest strength, is winning headers. I think he gets under the ball. So I wouldn't expect us to be doing that if Kyogo was the man in the middle. The fact that Giakoumakis has that physicality about him, which, like yourself, I think is great, and it's a great option to bring into the side. I've not been that impressed so far with him, his aerial prowess, as it were. You would hope that someone eventually would get on the end of one of them when it's 17, 18 per half. If you come out of a game and you've crossed almost 40 balls, you would hope someone would get on the end of one of them. But what is plan B when we're not getting on the end of the balls, when Livingston seem fairly comfortable defending those balls? Plan B has to be picking that lock a different way. Before the game, in the WhatsApp group, we were talking about somehow fitting Giakoumakis and Kyogo into the same team, not as an out-and-out front two. Is there a way we can do that with Giakoumakis pulling strings behind him?
I think with the runs that Kyogo makes and the physicality of Giakoumakis, like we've talked about, there's a way for them to be, and not to be too cliche about it, a big man and the wee man up top, but there's a way to use Giakoumakis as a pivot point and keep the ball on the deck and let him feed balls through to Kyogo. So that's a way in which I think we could change the game. Jim Orr, who's on with me on a Friday, had talked about wanting to see a 4-4-2 or maybe even a 4-1-3-2 to see what different options are there. And I think on a game like today, when we just seem a bit stodgy and a little bit like we're unable to create the chances, I think this is a perfect opportunity to change shape. Having said that, that's all wishful thinking on our part. There's no evidence so far from the games that we've played that he's been working on any different shape, because as we all know, his famous quote is, plan B is to do plan A but better. And that's the only reason that I think we might not change, because there's been no evidence as of yet that there's any other shape that we would be willing to play.
One of the points that Autumn Glow also made was around Beaton. I'm not going to be too critical of Beaton, but I think the lack of focus was maybe allowing the ball to run under his foot on two occasions. Once in an area where there was no danger, but the second occasion, if he manages to get control of that ball, he's got a clear shot at goal, Laura. I mean, the option on the bench that you'd probably be looking at there is James McCarthy. But I mean, we've not seen him for weeks. And, maybe the James McCarthy that we all remember, where he's down playing in the Premiership down south, would be an option. But I don't know if that's the James McCarthy we've got on the bench.
Yeah, we talked about Julian before the match and how coming back from injury, you're not always the same player. I know that McCarthy's had injury problems over the last couple of years, and it might be that, and I've said before, my worry is that a player of James McCarthy's quality doesn't come to Celtic at 30 years old if he's still got the same level of football to offer that has kept him in the Premier League for as many years as it has. So while I don't think he's an ideal option, the way that Beaton's playing, I would certainly see no harm in giving McCarthy a run out, because I think he can't be any worse than he's not going to let the ball run under his feet or anything like that. He's going to be at least as good as Beaton, and if Beaton's having a poor game, I think we need to show that decisiveness and make the change.
Well, we are looking at changes. I don't expect Ange to make any at half-time unless someone's pulled up and we're unaware of it. But Pat Maguire reckons, like we said before, Laura, Turnbull should be having a dig, Calmac too. Sometimes when it is a performance... Listen, we've seen these performances under, our last 3 or 4 managers. We've seen them under Brendan Rodgers where, we often were dug out by a Stuart Armstrong, a Paddy Roberts, a Dembele who could strike from distance. And when you look at the team that we've got just now, yeah, absolutely. Callum McGregor and Turnbull certainly could do that as well. Autumn Glow reckons that the right move would be Mikey for Abada. I don't think Abada's had a particularly bad half, to be honest with you. And I think he does link up pretty well with Tony Ralston. But I would be perhaps expecting a change by bringing on one of the wide players if we can't unlock this defence in the first 10-15 minutes, Laura.
Yeah, I think that's the main point I would make as well, is even if there's not going to be any changes made after the half-time break, I hope that there's still enough sort of decisiveness in Ange's thinking that he's going to make those changes sooner rather than later. You could argue in his favour of keeping things the same, that we did seem like we were getting better chances and getting more on top of the game just towards the end of the first half. So maybe his thinking is going to be, we'll go out for the first 10 minutes and see what happens. But like you, if after the first 10 minutes we don't start the half the way we ended the first half, you're wanting to make changes around the 60-minute mark for sure. And I think Johnston's a great option, to be honest, because we had a bit of a conversation about him on the Friday Bulletin yesterday. I said that my concern about him had been that through no fault of his own, he's maybe physically not built to be a footballer because he's had so many knocks, so many injuries. It's just unfortunate for some people if that's the way they're built. But seeing him come back from these latest injury rounds, he's looking bulkier. He's confirmed himself that he's trying to bulk up in the gym, and he's maybe going to become a bit more robust of a player. So I would like to see more of him this second half. I don't think Abada's been bad, but I don't think that he could have any complaints if somebody was brought on in his place either. So I think that's a fair enough option to look into.
Another one, interestingly enough, talking of options, we've got a comment coming in from VNV Mode. Ajeti would be shaking his head because of all the chances he's had. We didn't even mention the fact that Albion Ajeti isn't even on the bench today. It just shows you how far down the pecking order he has fallen. It did look at the beginning of the season like this might be his final throw of the dice, but it's not really worked out. He'll always be remembered as being the player that scored the first goal under Ange Postecoglou. But, it doesn't mean a great deal when you consider who was the first goal scorer under Brendan Rodgers, and that was Nadir Chifchi. So, yes, we do have a few options on the bench. Here's one for you, Laura. James Forrest. I wouldn't bet against him coming on and doing something that we've seen so often, coming inside and hitting it with the outside of his right boot when it looks easier to hit it with his left foot. Is that an option for you? Or are you looking at that thinking, you know what, there's no way he can be ready? But then on the flip side, if he's not ready, he wouldn't be on the bench.
Yeah, sorry, just thinking about Nadir Chifchi, I think he's my stake for worst Celtic number 7 of all time, but there you go. James Forrest, yeah, I'm of the thinking the same as a lot of people, where if you're on the bench, you're available for selection. You shouldn't be on the bench if you aren't available. And so if he is available, there's never going to be any harm in bringing James Forrest on. He had that brief spell where he came back earlier in the season and we realised how much we had missed him. I'm one of those fans who, like a lot of people, underappreciated James Forrest for what he brought to us and didn't realise really how important he was until he was out of the team. And so I'm really looking forward to having him back as an option, especially with all the wide players that we have. He's just going to be another string to our bow. No disrespect to Livingston, but 0-0 against them at half-time at Celtic Park, that's not a situation that's going to intimidate James Forrest. He'll be itching to go off the bench, I'm sure, and I think we should take full advantage of that. And to be honest, having said that Mikey Johnston might be a good option, but I think James Forrest might be an even better one. So.
Brilliant. Well, the action has started again at Celtic Park, Laura. We'll rejoin that, and we will be coming back for the full-time reaction show. So thank you, everybody, for getting involved on the various platforms that we're going out live on. And please join us at full time on A Celtic State of Mind.